Okay, good evening, good tavach, everyone. Welcome, as we welcome in Saba, and we welcome in Avram Schenkman, Ben Zion Cohn, Dr. Black. We welcome in Nachman Chapler, Marshall Castle, Irving Fishbaum, Mel Zachter, Mordechai Sultan, Shimon Klein, Yitzi Muller, A.B. Spry, Rabbi Kranz, Menachem Umansky, Bruce Eisenberg, and look at it here, a man, a blast from the past, Mark Frankel, Naftali Jablin, Aaron Swade, Ilya Shutman, Chaim Brun, Yehuda from Yerushalayim. And here in Shul, we have, Moshe Lehman just joined us. Here in Shul, we have Rebbe Yafi, who is honoring us with joining us, and Barish Gesserman, and David Helfgott has joined us on Kol HaLashon, Agad Tavach. Okay, we have our work cut out for us this evening, and we are dedicated by A.B. Spry, who is dedicating for the safety of the Chayalim. I'm afraid we lost another 4 Chayalim in a booby trap. It's just so terrible. They go in with the deck stacked against them. Then the Shama should have an aliyah, and then there should be the safety for all the Chayalim and the victory and safety of Klal Yisrael, especially Zev ben Yuta. By Shimon Klein, Lila Nishmas Asher Anshel ben Yehuda, and Gittel Bas Shimon Pinchas. By Irving Fishbaum for his Gesund Isser ben Rezel. We begin on Daf Ches. We're a little bit ahead. And we're discussing a question of where Marshall has Baininus and Ziburius. He has mediocre and he has inferior real estate. So in one brisa, we learned that the one who was damaged and the Baal Chayv collects from the Baininus, and the Ksuvas Isha collects from the Zibarius. In another brisa, we learned that only the one that was damaged collects from the Baininus, and the Baal Chayv and the Ksuvas Isha collect from the Zibarius. And we're trying to reconcile that. First of all, let me tell you where we're up to. We're up to the V'i Bayis Ema, which is situated 11 lines from the top of Daf Ches Amud Aleph. So we're a little bit ahead. 11 lines from the top of Daf Ches Amud Aleph. Let me just remind you, as we welcome in Mo Kushner back from the hospital, Baruch Hashem, Sandy Grunfelder just joined us, Harrison Kletzel, and Gedalia Engel has just joined us. Wonderful to have you, Gedalia. Dr. Guy has just joined us for our 25th Zoomer of the evening. So let me just remind you that in a normal situation, if Marshall damaged someone, owed money to someone, and there's a Ksuvas Isha, so for the damages, you pay from Meitiv, from the best. A creditor gets from Baininus, and the Ksuvas Isha is from Ziburius. So that would be in a normal situation. Our case is where Marshall doesn't have any idios. He doesn't have any superior quality. He only has Baininus and Ziburius. So one brisa says that both the Nizik and the Baal Chayv take from the Baininus, and the Ksuvas Isha is from the Ziburius. The other brisa says that only the damaged party gets from the Baininus, and the Baal Chayv and the Ksuvas Isha get from the Ziburius. And we're trying to figure out how to reconcile those two teachings. So the Gemara's second approach is V'i Bayis Ema, Aidi va'aidi shaloi hoisoloi idris umechara. Yesterday we floated the possibility that Marshall once had idios and he sold it. And that's why the that's why the Baal Chayv gets a claim on the Baininus, because when Marshall had Idias, then the Baininus was his mediocre, and the Baal Chayv already had a lien on the Baininus. But now the Gemara says, Marshall never had the best quality of land. That never was the case. Thank you. That was never the case. V'loi kasha, hadishavya beininis shaloi k'idyas dialma. One is talking about where his beininis, Marshall's beininis, was equal to the best quality in general terms. In other words, Marshall's Baininus, what's standard for Marshall's Baininus, was superior quality in the rest of the world. And therefore, that's why only the Nizik could take from it. Because since it's on the normal level, it's superior quality, the creditor can't take from it. On the other hand, if his intermediate is real intermediate on regular standards, so then the Baal Chayv collects him an intermediate, and that's all he has for the Nizik, so that's why the Nizik and the creditor take from Baininus. Both are talking about where his mediocre is standard mediocre. So if it's standard mediocre, how does he get to push the creditor to Ziburius? A creditor usually collects from Baininus. We evaluate with what Marshall has. Now, since Marshall has only inferior and mediocre, so his mediocre becomes his idios, becomes his best. And therefore, since it's his best, only the one who is damaged could take it. It's too good for the creditor, then the creditor gets pushed to the Ziburius. No, we go according to what's the standard in the marketplace. And the standard in the marketplace is Marshall's mediocre is mediocre. And since it's mediocre, so the one that's damaged collects from that because that's the best that he has. And the creditor also collects from that because he's entitled to mediocre. And the issue gets from Ziburius. Ravina says, nah, there's a much more broader machlokes over here. And that is, if a creditor is entitled to collect from mediocre land. Ravina Amar b'de'ula pligi. You see, biblically speaking, a creditor can only take from Ziburius. Ravina Amar b'de'ula pligi. The Amar Ula, Dvar Torah, biblically speaking, Baal Chayv b'Ziburius. A creditor can only get the inferior land. The guy that Marshall owes money to, a very standard thing. Marshall owes money, right? So the guy that Marshall owes money to is really only able to collect from his inferior karka. Why? Shenema, because the Torah says about a debtor, b'chutz tamid, he stands outside, v'ish asher noishavai, and b'chutz tamid, the creditor stands outside, and v'ish asher ater noishavai, and the man that you have a claim on, yoitzi alecha es ha'ovet hachutza. He brings out to you the collateral outside. Now, when a man brings outside something on his own volition, what's he going to bring? He's going to bring his least worth valuable. What does he offer? If he's not being demanded upon, he offers his most inferior utensil. So if Marshall as a debtor only has to pay from inferior, why would we say he has to pay from Baininus, from intermediate? That's in order not to shut down credit. Because otherwise people won't give loans. If I'm going to give loans and I'm always going to get, the most inferior property, why would I give loans? In order not to shut the doors to credit. You have to make credit, because otherwise the wheels of society wouldn't be greased. Business runs on the availability of credit. So mar islay takantadula, the brisa that says that if there's baininess and ziburius, both the one that's damaged and the creditor collects from baininess holds like ula, that they made a takana that the creditor should get from baininess. Omar less like takantadula, he goes with the strict implication of the pasuk that a creditor can only collect from the inferior property. Yes.
So the Torah's created a din that people can't abide by? We know we have cases like that, but why would the Torah create a din like that?
The Torah said that this would be the way that the debtor is only responsible when the Chachamim observed that there was a slowdown of people giving loans. They had to adapt something.
The Torah would know that.
No. It depends. It depends on the market. So the market might have changed. There was a time that the Torah's way worked. So the Torah leaves that open. That's why the Torah has a rule of Leisasim and Adavar Asher Yagidu Lecha Yemin Ismail, which is the source of doing the words of the rabbis. So that if they see situations that need enactments, the Torah gave them an ability to make an enactment. Now, the next Gemara is going to throw at us. We want to learn from Moshe Yedidia ben Yechil Michel. Okay. There is a few rules that we have to get in our mind. We know. Let's take a situation. Pick somebody. So hard. Okay, Marshall. 17 is B'gematria Chet. I know. That's the way it works. You're not supposed to have nuts because it's B'gematria Chet and it's B'gematria Tov, right? By the way, Chet is Chestes, but that's why we don't eat nuts during Aseret Simei Tshuva, or some people don't eat all the way till Hoshana Rabbah, because although it's B'gematria Tov, it's also B'gematria Chet. So anyway, Marshall is wearing a very appropriate jersey. We call him Chetala for short. So anyway, look at him, he's frozen. Anyway, so but let's get serious over here. In the event that Marshall owed money to people, and there were damages that he owed, and a ksuvas isha. And Marshall has 3 types of land. And he sold his intermediate and inferior land. And all he has is superior land. The din is that everybody could take from his superior land. Marshall can't tell the debtor, don't bother me. Go to my buyers who bought from me the mediocre land. You have a previous lien. Take the mediocre land. He can't say that because the rule is, as long as you have nechosim ben chayrin, that means property still by Marshall, you cannot collect from nechosim mishubadim. You cannot collect for mortgage properties. Now, let me spice this up a little bit. Let's say Marshall sold first his Ziburius, then his Baininus, and then his Idius. So let's get a case over here. Marshall sold first his Ziburius to Mel. Then he sold his Baininus to Mordechai. And then he sold his Idius to Shimon. Now he has nothing. Everybody goes to collect first from Shimon, because he's the last guy on the totem pole. Right? Mordechai says, no, I made sure that Marshall still had available property. Mel, for sure. Mel's an old pro. He said, I made sure that Marshall had a lot of property left by him. Shimon is the last one to buy from him, so everybody takes from Shimon. Even the Isha for Ziburius. Now with that little background, and all joking aside, Mark, it's really good to have you back. I'm sorry you have to work so late in the night. This week is going to be better?
Yep, back to normal time.
Good. By the way, you missed the chak also.
I know.
Yeah.
It's I'm all caught up, but not with the chok. I have to.
I have news for you, Rabbi Say. If I hold out, I'm planning to give another chak tonight. There's a short chak. It's a Friday chak, so I'm planning to give a chak tonight. I'll let you know, but if everything goes fine, I think I'm going to give a chak tonight at 11. Anyway, let's see how we get through these dafin. Tan Rabbanan. Machar le'echad oy l'shloisha b'nei adam ke'echad. Now here, Marshall sells either everything to Shimon or to 3 people at the same time. To Mel, Mordechai, and Shimon at the same time. So then there's no problem. Because kulam nichnasu tachas habaylim. So there, since there's nobody that has preference one with the other, so the one that was damaged collects the mate of the Idius from Shimon, the one that was a Balchayv collects the Baininus from Mordechai, and the Ksuvas Isha collects from Mel the Ziburius. Or if everything was sold at once to Shimon, so then everybody collects from the Nizik collects the Meita from Idius, the Balchayv collects the Baininus from Shimon, and the Isha collects the Ziburius. B'zeh achazeh, like I told you, however, if Marshall sold first to Mel, then to Mordechai, and then to Shimon, so Shimon is the last one, so Kulan Goyvim and Achron, they all collect from Shimon. Because the other ones say, look, we protected ourselves, we made sure that there's still property left by Marshall. So Kulan Goyvim and Achron, everybody collects from Shimon. Ain't like once Shimon is exhausted of the property, then Goyvim Mishulafanov, then they collect from Mordechai. Ain't like Goyvim Mishulafanov. And by the way, I just should tell you that it depends if they bought B'yachrayis with security, if then they could go back to Marshall and say, they took my land, reimburse me, right? And knowing Marshall, everybody buys with security, especially smart people like the people we're dealing with. Now, le'echad heichidami. It says machran le'echad. If he sold it to one of them, heichidami. Ilema babas achas. If he sold it to Shimon at the same time, of course, the damaged one takes the Idius, the creditor takes the Baininus, and the Isha takes the Ziburius. I mean, hashta l'shloisha, if it's 3 at the same time, where there you might say, well, maybe one was in the morning and one was in the afternoon and one was in the night. But we don't say that because on a shtar it doesn't have the hours. They all take the place of the owner, and that's the Nizakin collects the Idius, the Baal Chayv collects the Baininus, and the Isha takes the Ziburius. Machran le'echad, if he sold it all at one time to Shimon, Mabai, of course that would be the din. What's the Chiddush? El pshita b'zeh hazeh, that he sold it to Shimon at 3 different times. So then the Gemara says, so then what does that mean? Then it should be that they should collect what was the last property that Shimon bought. Why would everybody get what's entitled to them? If Shimon bought the Ziburius last, then everybody should take Ziburius. Because Shimon will say, that's why I bought that last, so that everybody should take only from what I bought last. Because that's the one that was left last by Marshall. So, Umayshna shloisha dekol chad v'chad amalei hanachti lach makom ligvais mimenu, that if it's 3, then Mel and Mordechai say, listen, everybody's got to go collect from Shimon, because I left property by Marshall in order that should be where you collect from. Mel is very careful. He does a title search, and he saw there was a lot of property left, and when there's property left by Marshall, you can't take it from the buyer. Mordechai also saw there was property left. So Shimon bought the last property, everybody takes from Shimon. So if Shimon bought the Ziburius last, he'll say the same thing. I bought the Ziburius last because that was what was left by Marshall, and that's what you all could collect. Hainami al kol chad v'chad, and each property that he bought, leima lehanachti lak makam ligvois mimenu. He bought the Idius, he said, I left Baininus and Ziburius by Marshall. Then he bought the Baininus, he says, I left the Ziburius by Marshall. And when he bought the Ziburius last, he should say everybody has to collect from the Ziburius. Says the Gemara, you're right. It's talking about where Shimon bought the Idius last. He bought the superior quality land last. So then the Gemara says, so then the Baal Chayv and the Isha should also say, well, this is the last property, we want also the Idius. So says the Gemara, don't start up with Shimon. Says Shimon, you know what Shimon tells the Baal Chayv? He tells the Baal Chayv, look, don't ask me for the Idius. You better take your Baininus. Because if you don't take your Baininus, I'll return the Ziburius to Marshall. And then all you'll be able to collect is Ziburius, because that would be the only free property. Mishum damirlu ishas kisu v'shaklisu kedinaichu. If you're quiet and you take what you're supposed to take from the Baininus, shaklisu. V'ilai, but if not, madrinu shtara de Ziburius l'marei, I'll return the land of Ziburius to Marshall. And if I return the land of Ziburius to Marshall, then you'll only be able to collect from the Ziburius, because once there's free property by Marshall, you can't take from buyers. And then v'shaklisu kulum is Ziburius. Says the Gemara, ihachi, if that's so, then b'nizakin nami neimahachi. Then how could the one who is damaged take from Idius, even though that's the last property that Shimon bought? But Shimon will say, look, if you don't take from Baininus, I'll return the shtar of Ziburius to Marshall, and you won't be able to get only Ziburius. So you better not bother me to take the best land, you better take the mediocre land. Says Gemara, it must be that it's talking about that it's not Marshall. It's orphans. In other words, orphans are now not we'll tell you, it wasn't Marshall Castle, it was Marshall De Niro. And Marshall De Niro died. and all that's left was his son. And therefore, Shimon can't say, oh, thank you very much. Shimon, thank you. Shimon can't say that I'll return the document to the orphan because Yisayimim are not meshubed to pay the debt if they get property after the death of the father. The only thing that they're meshubed is what was bought from the father while he was alive. So there's not an option to say that you're going to return the shtar. The only shibud that can be collected is from Shimon and Mordechai and Mel that bought it from the lifetime while the seller was alive. But the orphans, there's no option to return the shtar to the orphan because then they wouldn't be mechuyev to pay from it because they're only mechuyev to pay from what was in the estate of the father. You don't have this trick that Shimon could say, look, I'll return it back to Marshall. Ella says the Gemara, so we're back to our question. If Shimon bought the Meitav last, and that's therefore the land that's on the hook, why can't everybody collect from the Meitav? So the reason is El Mishum da Amalu Taima Mai Emma Rabbanon. Why did Rabbanon say Ein Nifram Nechasim Mishubadim that you can't collect from mortgage property, b'makom sheyesh b'nei chayrim, that you can't collect from the buyers when Marshall still has property? Mishum tekanta didi. That's to protect me. That's to protect the buyer because buyers, they don't want to have their property taken away. So before they buy, they check that the seller still has some other property. They do a title search. But now he says, you want to use this logic on me now, on the buyer, that of the three properties, you should be able to collect from the last one that was bought. But now that I owe all three properties, I don't want that takana. I don't want that takana. Rather, I want you all to take what you deserve. The one that's damaged will take the idios, the one that's a creditor will take the baininess, and the one that's a isha will take the zebuyas. Kidarava. You're allowed to say that. If you say, I don't want a takana that was made to protect me, I don't want that takana because here it's to my detriment, you're allowed to say that. Shaimim lai. And the classic example is that the Chachamim were misaken that a husband gets his wife's salary in lieu of him supporting her. Now that takana was made to protect the woman. That she'll make a few dollars, the husband has to give her support. But if the woman is a brain surgeon and she makes $1 million a year, she could say, I don't want his tuna fish sandwiches. I don't want his steak sandwiches. I don't want the takana. As the Gemara says, my kigainzu, kid Ravuna. The Am Ravuna, yechayla isha shetayim labala. A woman could tell her husband, Eini nizainis, I don't want your support. Veini aisa, I'm not giving you my paycheck. So here too, Shimon could say, I don't want the takana now. Now that I own all three properties, I don't want to say that everybody is entitled to the last one. That was a takana that was made for my protection. In this case, I want each one to take the land that's due to them. The one that's damaged will take the idios. The one that's the balchay will take the baininus. And the one that's the isha will take the ziburias. Now, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niya b'dvaro. I don't know if it makes a difference, but if mentally it makes a difference, Rabbi Isai, I just want to let you know that the next staff, the next blot, is easier. And we have 30 Zoomers here this evening, which is really, really nice. Nice to have Chaim Braun with us. Dr. Guy is here. Mo, it's very nice that you're back out of the hospital, and you should stay gesund. And Rabbi Avram Schenkman, I just want to let you know that Monday night we're starting a 7:45 second Mariv. And we really need everybody's help. I mean, Mark is thinking about commuting from Pennsylvania. So, and Bruce, of course, Bruce will come once in a while as well. So, Avram, if you can make it at 7:45 Monday night, L'Kavod Rosh Chodesh. We're not doing it on Sunday because Sunday people aren't working. So we're trying to have the minyan Monday through Thursday at 7:45. But remember, we got to start at 7:45 because the Zoomers are waiting at 8 o'clock to start Mariv, you know. And Mark changed around his whole schedule to be on time. So, you know. Now, Pshita, it's obvious that mocher loikeach beininis v'ziburiyos. Here, Marshall had three properties: beininis, ziburiyos, beininis, and idios. And he sold to Mel and Mordechai the beininis and ziburiyos, v'shayir idios lefanov, and all he has is his best stuff. So then it's obvious that everybody comes and takes his idios. Because remember, you can't take from buyers while Marshall still has property. He's the guy on the hook. And that's called, by the way, B'nai Chayrim, free property. So it's pashit that in such a case, Leisu Kulu, everybody comes, and they come like barracudas, and everybody takes from a Marshall's best property. Why? It's the last one that's available. Obeinis v'ziburiyos lesnu gabe. The beinis and ziburiyos is not by him. The matzil lememalu that he could tell them govern obeinis v'ziburiyos. Deloi nichali b'tekanta d'Rabbanan. I'm not happy with the takana d'Rabbanan. Now,
this is the takana
yes.
of the buyer?
Yeah, no. What happened over here was, I left out a step. I'm sorry. What happened over here is Marshall sold everything to Shimon. And then Shimon sold the Beininis and Ziburiyos to Mel and Mordechai. So therefore, we come and we take everything from Shimon. Because he's on the hook as the first buyer. You know, Mel and Mordechai were careful. They're the second buyers. You have to go first to the first buyer. So again, Pshita, Machar Loikeach. See, I didn't translate that. Machar Loikeach. If Shimon, who got everything from Marshall, sold the Beininis with Ziburiyos, he sold the Beininis and Ziburiyos to Mel and Mordechai, V'shayir idios lefanov, and he kept just the superior quality, Leise kulu v'ligva idios. Everybody comes and collects from Shimon. That's the last available property. Ubeinis v'ziburiyos lesnu gabe, they're not by him anymore. The matzi l'meimalu gavi mebeinis v'ziburiyos d'loi nichali b'tekanta d'Rabbanan. He can't say that because he doesn't have the beinis and ziburiyos anymore, and he can't send them to Mel and Mordechai because they tell him, look, you're on the hook first. You bought it directly from Marshall. Oh, Avamochar idios. But if he sold the superior quality, V'shayir Beininis and Ziburiyos, and he kept by him the Beininis and Ziburiyos, so what's the situation in such a case? So here's what happened. Interesting situation. Marshall sold to Shimon first the Baininus, then the Ziburius, and then the Idius. So it was the Idius that was the last property that was on the hook. Then Shimon took that Idius, which was the last property that was on the hook, and he sold it to Mel. Everybody comes and says, Mel, we want to collect from the Idius. Because that was the last property that was by Marshall as Ben Chayrin. Because first he unloaded the Ziburius, then the Baininus. He still had the Idius by him. So we all had our eyes on that Idius. Then Marshall sold that Idius to Shimon, and then Shimon sold that Idius to Mel. So now everybody wants to say, we want that Idius. Because that was the last available property that was by Marshall as free property. So let's see the Gemara inside. Aval macha Idius v'shaya Baininus v'ziburius mai. So Savar Abaya Lameimer Asu Kulu Govum Idius. Everybody could come and collect that Idius because that was the last free property that was available by Marshall. Amalei Rava, so Rava says, no, you can't do that. And here, this is a rare rule. Ma mocha rishon l'sheni. What did Shimon sell to Mel? Kol skus shetavai liyadai. Any privilege that he had. So since when Shimon had the Idius, he was able to shift the Baal Chayiv and the Ksuvas Isha to the Baininus and the Ziburius. Became in the Ilu Asu Gabi Lokeach Rishon. If they would come to collect it from Shimon, Motzi Agvalu Mebaininus Ziburius, he could give the Baal Chayiv and the Isha from the Bainis and Ziburius, V'afal Pi, the Chizavnei Bainis v'Ziburius. Even though when he bought the Bainis and Ziburius, the Idius was still by Marshall, Akati Idius B'nei Chayrin Havei, Vein from the Chas Mishabadim Kos Mandik B'nei Chayrin. But Matzi Amalei, Shimon would be able to tell them, Loi Nichali B'Aitakana, Loi Keach Sheni, when Mel bought that from Shimon, Matzi Amalei, Gavi Baininus v'Ziburius, he could tell the Baal Chayiv and the Isha to get from Shimon's Baininus and Ziburius, the Chizavin Lokeach Sheni, when Mel, who's a very clever person, when he bought it, Adata de Kol Schusa de Avalei L'Rishon Begava Zavin. He bought it having in mind that he should be all the rights that Shimon had in that Idius. It's kind of clever.
What about the Nitzaka, though? He gets to collect from...
No, he gets to collect from the Idius, because even from Shimon he would have collected from.
Right, I understand, but the fact that he nachti lechabakim ligvos by the first buyer, you don't say that. Mel can't say that.
No, he can't say that because of the fact that he bought the last property. Now, Amar Rava, I told you this is a little tricky. And that's a good point, Rabbi Kranz. Amar Rava, Ruvain shemachar kol seidaisav l'Shimon. Ruvain sold all his fields to Shimon. That means the Ziburius, the Baininus, and Idius. V'halach Shimon, and Shimon went umachar soda achas l'Levi, and he sold one field to Levi. Ubo bal chayiv de Ruvain, and the creditor of Ruvain comes. Rotza mizeh goiva, rotza mizeh goiva. Now here's the situation. Reuven owed money to Dr. Black. Now we owe money. You get to collect from Baininus. Reuven sold Idias, Baininus, and Zeburius to Shimon. Shimon sold Baininus to Levi. So here the Gemara says, Rotzam is Zegaiva, Rotzam is Zegaiva. If Dr. Black wants, he could take from Levi the Baininus. If he wants, he could take from Shimon the Zeburius. V'loy Amran ela dezaven Baininus. But this is only where he sold to Levi, Shimon sold to Levi Baininus. So he sold the property that Dr. Black had a lien on. Aval Zovan Idias Viziburius, but if he sold to Levi superior or inferior, then Levi could say, what do you think I didn't buy the Baininus? I did a title search, I know you have a creditor. That's why I took superior and inferior. Now, even when he sells to Levi the Baininus, where he didn't leave Shimon equal Baininus. Where he didn't say, Hanachti lach makom ligvei Shimon. Where he can't say, look, I specifically made sure that I left Baininus for you by Shimon. And you got to go to Shimon first before you come to me. Aval shaya Baininus kavase gabe Shimon, but if he left equivalent Baininus by Shimon, like Govimine, the Matzi Amalei, he could tell Dr. Black, Hanachti lach makom ligveis mimeno. I left you to enough Baininus to go to Shimon. Don't come to me. And here we have a Shimon joining us. Now, next case. Amar Abaya. So now, we remember I told you that this is such a thing as security. That means when you sell something to someone, the buyer could be very careful. Like if you're going to buy something for Marshall, and you buy it with achrayus. That means that if anything happens, you got to give me compensation. That's called security. So Amar Abaya, Reuven shemachar soda l'Shimon b'achrayus. Reuven sold Shimon a field, promising security, and it was very wise of Shimon. He was had foresight. V'asa bal chayv de Reuven, the creditor of Reuven came, v'toraf b'Shimon, and he seized the property from Shimon. Dinahu de azal Reuven umishtoi dina ba'adei. It is within Reuven's rights to go and argue with his creditor not to take the land away from Shimon. And the creditor can't tell him, but out. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm taking it away from Shimon. My dealing is with Shimon, because Reuven tells him, if you take it away from Shimon, since I sold it with security, and now the Gemara adds a further caveat. Even if Reuven sold it to Shimon without security, still Reuven could come and argue that the creditor shouldn't take it. Even if he sold it to Shimon without security, so now the creditor says, butt off, butt out. It's not negating you. You're not even going to have to compensate him. To Amalei, because he tells him, Reuven could tell the creditor, Loi nichali, I don't want the Tahavi Shimon Tarumas alai, that Shimon should have any tightness on me. And just pause a moment, Rabbi, say just to change over the channel over here.